ain't searching, I remember. I was born with the answer. Through the fire, through the pressure, I emerge with the standard. I don't follow, I awaken. Ain't no man got to fix it. I'm the root, I'm the branches. I'm the law and the language. Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another round of My Patriot Report Live. I'm the bridge connecting the next generation to federal contracting. I am Ratwan Hill, and with me I have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ambassador of Peace. And if you don't know who he is by now, you might want to ask Chat GPT, Mr. Walter Cotton III. Mr. Cotton, man, happy Wednesday. How are you doing?
Happy hump day. Happy hump day. I personally am doing well.
Yes, sir.
Personally doing well.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, I didn't want to bring it up, and we're not going to touch on it, but I did just want to reinforce a message that, please engage with your Congress so we could stop lessen the blows that are going on within the geopolitics that are going on. I did want to start that message off with that, but
I think that you got to address the elephant in the room, right? And the elephant in the room, at least in my humble opinion, is the fact that there was kinetic activity in Iran as a result of the Strait of Hormuz. And based on our last understanding, there was a MOU that had been signed. And I think we were under the belief that MOU signing was bolstered by the fact that the House and the Senate had passed a war powers resolution based on, Article 5 of the War Powers Act that required the president to come in and sit down and have a conversation with Congress before any additional use of the military occurred. And so now we're sitting in a situation where there has been use of the military, and the Congress has got to call the president to reconcile. And we, the people, have to point the Congress's attention to the fact that we are a nation that's based on the rule of law, right? We are an agreement-capable nation. And if we don't follow our own internal laws and rules, how can we expect anybody anywhere else to trust us?
Mm-hmm. And that was going to be my question. Like, okay, so if we see clear violations of the Constitution, how relevant is the Constitution if nobody's reining in? I mean, I understand that at a hierarchy level, they're played by different rules, even though the rules are the rules. But from my generation, specifically, like, if understanding the Constitution, we understand the Constitution, but our leadership is not following the Constitution, that kind of doesn't give us a great guidance, so.
And just delivering those words in a sentence lets me know that we need to do a better job of educating your generation as to what they have in the Constitution, right? I would agree with you that, over time, documents like the Constitution, like organizations, we talked about this in the last podcast, reach that critical inflection point, right? Where you have to reinvent them for the generation that is going to be responsible to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Constitution, I think my good friend Sophia Nelson, I keep promoting her book, is speaking to your generation when she says you guys need to redefine freedom for your generation, which includes maybe a redefinition, a reimagining of the Constitution, but as a document, right, that is the underpinning of our republic. That is a powerful, powerful tool that other nations don't enjoy. That Constitution gives this constitutional republic the ability to protect your sovereign voice, your sovereign vote. So it's absolutely critical that your generation acquire an understanding and appreciation of that document to include your ability to reimagine it. And if a point in time occurs where we see offenses against the Constitution that need to be reconsidered, you guys can caucus together in a majority and cause that to happen. But it is imperative, it is critical that your generation not lose sight of the fact that you reside in a constitutional republic that is governed by a document that you have the ability to alter.
Okay, now with that in mind, and the movement you're driving with the Capital Matters, where does it start in the local communities, or do we have to just be in position where how does that process start? How do we get in position to where we now have more of a say? So is it just getting a group of constituents together, or is it starts with that Capital Matters movement?
Well, the ideation of the need for Capital Matters movement is born out of what we're talking about right now. It's clear that our younger generation has lost the connective tissue in terms of understanding the political process, the tools, the resources, and I think that we need a forcing function to drive that knowledge, to expand that knowledge base. And so what I believe is the best way to learn something is to actually participate in it with the intention of having to teach it to the next generation. And so again, my friend's example, the Hill Vets example, is a very strong example of how your influence, your direct lobbying in the process can make a difference. And so what I believe is by expanding that federal Hill Vets model to a local level, right, to a state and local level, what we can do is we can get young people engaged in the political process, right? Actually, inside the bakery, making the ingredients that ultimately result in the breads and the donuts. I think that by getting them involved in the process, we can't help but increase the IQ. We can't help but increase their political IQ, which will result in, better outcomes in terms of actual candidates that we have to pick from in elections. I mean, if you just look at what's going on in Maine, right, that's an example of a deeper, more systemic process or more systemic problem that we have in our system, where the right wing of the party and the left wing of the party has just gotten so out of control that they think that they run the party. And that's where your generation has an opportunity to engage and remind them of the fact that in these United States of America, we operate under the powers of a constitutional republic that we want to keep.
So essentially, you're saying things are running wild because we're not engaging. Is that
absolutely? Things are running amok right now because the hypnotism of the invisible hand of Mr. Global has got everybody believing that the only place we can make a difference is at the ballot box. Right. So even right now, there's a lot of dialogue and discussion about the midterms, but there's a lot of time between now and the November midterms. Right. There are people that you and I care for that are sitting in harm's way right now. And something can be done based on the existing settled law, as I read it, if it's enforced, to provide those individuals some relief, to ensure that our nation doesn't get deeper into harm's way. And that requires you to take a letter from the script that we use to get that War Powers Act approved and pick up the phone and call your Congress. A little civil disobedience. And we're not talking about marching in the streets because we as people of color learned a long time ago that a long march to nowhere doesn't get you anywhere. And so civil disobedience that's effective is the kind of civil disobedience that gets attention. So picking up the phone and calling your congressman, you as an individual doesn't have an impact, right? But if all of his constituents, if all of her constituents pick up the phone at the same time and call them over duration, their phone lines won't work. They'll always be busy because somebody will be on hold trying to get the message across. If all of the constituents within their district, within their general area, right, send an email into the Congress or senator's server, it will shut down the congressional email. And it will get the attention of our lawmakers that we mean business. But if we continue to do the same kabuki dance that we've been doing with the midterm election primaries, if we continue to play the game, we're going to continue to get what we've gotten. So it's up to your generation, right, to wake up, get engaged, and get involved.
It was interesting you said civil disobedience when you were naming actions that we could take to reach out to our Congress. Now, I'm assuming you're not saying that from a piece of positive standpoint. You're saying like from the higher ups, the powers that be, that is being looked at as civil disobedience because we're using the mechanisms that we have to engage with our Congress. Is that?
Yeah, okay. That's a Walterism, a play on words, right? No, it's not. You're not disobeying the congressman by calling him, right? The disobedience comes in not releasing the phone line, right? In tying up the phone line so that they can't do their business, so that they know you mean business, right? So the thing that I'm saying is that everybody can do something.
Yeah.
Short of picking up arms and going into the street. That's not necessary, right? What's necessary is for us to communicate a calm and clear message to our politicians that says the power of the governed is delegated. The power of the governed is delegated to you, and we can take it back.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And guys, I do want to share this message with you. If you support this movement, you want to join this movement, you want to be a part of this movement, we ask that you surf down to the website and join the Elite SDVOB network, and it is free to join. And if you don't want to join the movement, that's fine. But as we continue to fight the good fight for veterans, push advocacy, and push this message that gets a level playing field for veterans, we ask that you scan the barcode and donate anything so we could keep doing this, doing what we do.
And I want to make sure that we clarify this because the New York chapter of the Elite Service Disabled Veteran Network is the chapter you will run into when you hit that URL below. And that is the asset that is going to give you a free community membership that you can use to access all of the other benefits that we're making available to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, while all this craziness and chaos is going on, we do have the ability to control our economic future right now. And that's something I want to focus on, this regentrification message that we've been driving, revitalizing our communities. I did want to have that conversation. Now, we have the Defense Production Act, where, you could build out. It's pretty much how I would describe it as a bank being able to invest money into a business in just the simplest term.
It's not a bank, it's the government, right? And that's the important consideration. It's the government coming into allegiance, partnership, and alliance with industry to make an investment in remanufacturing or whatever the case may be. So when you think about these major projects, they normally talk about them in terms of capital stacks, right? And normally there's an equity capital stack, right? There's a banking capital stack. In this particular instance, you'd have a public sector capital stack in the form of the Defense Production Act, where the government can directly invest with industry. The example that we've seen recently of the president utilizing this authority was in the $700 million that was invested with the coal industry recently to bring a lot of that capability back online. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on the functionality of the Defense Production Act.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate that clarification as well. Now, how does Joe get access to that? Now, is it regular procurement? I just registered in SAM. I go to the government. I have a business plan, and
well, you know, we're not talking to Joe. We're talking to GI Joe, right? We're talking to our veterans, right? Our disabled veterans specifically, who have a preference which gives them a legislative advantage in accessing these programs. Everything that we're talking about doing is from a position of strength. It's from a legislative point of view. And the reason that that's important is because the things and programs that we're targeting are all programs that are covered by existing settled law. That means they are already the rule of the land, and we don't have to ask anyone's permission to do the things that we're talking about doing. Okay, and that's important to take into consideration. What was your question?
My question was in regards to how does regular Joe get access to that fund?
And thanks for reminding me, for pulling me back out of the dark there. But the point that I was making as it relates to these settled laws, Joe needs to understand what his rights are under these settled laws, and he needs to understand what his or her advantages are. And in this particular instance, as we talked about, we are focusing on disabled veterans who have the settled law advantage that comes from Public Law 10650, right, which creates a gold contracting program for disabled veterans, and that's underpinned or supplemented by laws like Public Law 109461, which is the Veterans First legislation. So in those instances or situations, the individuals, the Joes that you're talking about, need to learn what their rights are under these settled laws, because under many of these settled laws, it empowers Joe with the ability to compel the federal government, to compel the federal agency to award them a contract. So that turns Joe into a jobs creating agent. Let me say that another way. Studying yourself approved, Joe, empowers you with the know-how necessary to become a jobs creating agent and target more than $1.3 trillion worth of demand.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I did want to make a segue to talk about this fourth quarter. Now, this fourth quarter, what changed this year? What dynamics in this quarter changed this year that made this year different from any other previous year in federal contracting, in your opinion?
Well, it was the dismantling of DEI. And the executive orders that this president put out to consolidate contracts that took pathways for awarding contracts and constricted them. One of the major pathways was the 8A pathway that contracting officers were accustomed to using. And because that pathway wasn't liberally available and there during the fiscal year, as we approach the fourth quarter, what I'm hearing from my sources in contracting is they have more money than they have year left. And in the federal government, it is a statutory requirement that the monies that are appropriated in a fiscal year are spent. They are obligated and distributed during that fiscal year. And so we've got contracting officers and agencies across the federal government that are sitting with a hard problem, right? Either they have just too much money in their budget and nowhere to allocate it, or they have program managers who have requirements that are slated to go through the consolidation portal, and they don't want them to go through the consolidation portal because their hope is that they can find another place for them. And so you've got contracting officers that are dealing with the hard problem of having too big a requirement with a bunch of money left and needing a home, needing a solution. And you believe, let me throw it back on you. You believe that there's a solution to that challenge, don't you, Mr. Hill?
Yes, sir. And not only do we believe there's a solution, we're actively, bringing the solution to the streets. We know they're consolidating bundling. We understand that DEI's effect is affecting contracting officers and their requirements. But we also understand that service disabled veteran-owned small businesses are not in that DEI box because we're based off of merit. Either you served or you didn't. And with that in mind, we understand that those requirements that were awarded the 8A in the FAR Part 19 rewrite allowed the contracting officers to remove those contracts from that 8A program as long as it's going to another socioeconomic status. And again, because we understand DEI has been dismantled, we understand that really only leaves one or two viable pathways. And because of Public Law 10650, Public Law 109461, it gives the service disabled veteran the golden ticket or the competitive advantage. And we were proactive in creating that scalable solution that allows us to be a bigger small business or a bigger service disabled veteran-owned small business. So those requirements that the contracting officer have in this fourth quarter, that bottleneck that they're experiencing, that we give them the easy button that allows them to be award a contract to a compliant pathway, which is the bigger service disabled veteran-owned small business.
Okay, and I'm sitting here listening to you, and I can hear all of the program managers out there going, really? You mean there's a place that I could potentially take my requirement and not get it caught up in this crap show that is currently underway? And I'm hearing contracting officers' ears perk up and say, wait a minute, you mean there's a solution that could consume a 10, 20, or $30 million requirement that's available to me today? And I can hear a sigh right after that thought comes out. And that sigh have the underpinning of the words that say, but there's not enough time left. There's not enough time left, right, for me to take this $30 million, this $50 million requirement, this $100 million requirement, go through the market research process necessary, and ultimately produce a award that can occur to a responsible and responsive organization by September 30th, which is the end of the fiscal year. So if I'm a contracting officer and I'm having those thoughts, I'm having those ideations, is your solution something that can help me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because we were forward leaning, and that's also a benefit of being a part of the elite SDVOB network and getting that cotton in your ear. We was early to the party. Let me just put it that way. We were early to the party and understanding, because of this DEI being dismantled, that they were going to face this type of problem. So we were forward leaning in creating and being proactive in creating that scalable solution, what we call pre-integrated capability. So we built a team that is already designed and engineered to handle multiple requirements because we built an agile team.
So, without giving away your secret sauce, right? Let's talk in a little bit of code here. So, is it reasonable to say that what you've created is a service disabled veteran owned small business stem cell,
Yes.
right? And for those of you who don't know
yeah.
right, the medical analogy, a stem cell can become any organ, tissue, or bone in the body. You just need to put it in a petri dish with it. So you've created a stem cell of a service disabled veteran that can become anything that the contracting officers need at their point of need in whatever size they need it in. And so if they've got a requirement, like let's say that was an 8A requirement that needs to be awarded, it needs a staging area, you can absorb that within the 90 days or less than 90 days that are available without having to go through the market research, the solicitation process, and those awards can be made to a service disabled veteran. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So I'm going to speak to the contracting officers that are out there that I know are wrestling with the hard problem that Mr. Hill is talking about. I know that you've got program managers out there that don't want you to take their requirement and consolidate it under one of the many paths that you've been suggested to consolidate it along, because they, like I know, that this administration's time is running out. And when this administration's time ultimately runs out and the new administration comes in, a lot of change is going to occur. So there are program managers who've been around this block long enough to know that they don't want their requirement to get caught up in the shit show. And so what Mr. Hill is saying, I believe, is that he has a pathway for any requirement that needs a home of any size, because he's got like a Lego set of service disabled veteran small businesses that are scalable, that can meet any need. Mr. Hill's email address is going to be passing along the bottom of this replay. I'd holla at your boy if I were you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I do want to reiterate the message that if you're a veteran, you need to join the Elite SDVOSB network. Now, I'm highly recommending that you join so you get caught in the ear, because the things that we're talking about is novel, and I could tell you firsthand from my experience talking to people who been in the industry 20 or 30 years, it's a foreign language to them. But we got the receipts that show that this is something that has a foundation. Now, this is not coming out of thin air. This is based off of factual evidence with receipts. So please join the Elite SDVOB network so you can participate in this generational wealth transfer with me. And guys, on that note, I am Ratwan Hill, and that is the Mr. Walter Cotton III. Until next time.